We are recording. I'm gonna wear the 12's jacket. Hello. This is what I watched this month. We can make an ASMR video if we want to. We can do whatever we want. Number 1, Little Women. Saoirse Ronan's fantastic in it. Greta Gerwig, I think, improves a lot of the elements of Lady Bird that I didn't love. I think that she improves on her cinematography, especially because I think in Lady Bird it's kind of bland looking sometimes. Her direction, I think that it's far more interesting than in Lady Bird. Generally, like, the voice behind it feels more emphatic, which is her style. One of the few period pieces that doesn't get up its own ass about being a period piece. My Neighbor Totoro, which was a weirdly unimpressive Ghibli film based on all the other ones I've seen, because I really like Ghibli films, and My Neighbor Totoro was just fine. I Love You Man with Jason Segel and Paul Rudd is a fun little buddy movie, surprisingly not that homophobic based on the concept. One or two jokes really don't land in 2020, but you know what? The rest of them are pretty good. You know, it stays clear of a lot of the territory I thought it wouldn't stay clear of, which was surprising and nice. Kiki's Delivery Service. Kiki's Delivery Service is one of the best animated Ghibli films, and also one of the best characters in the Ghibli films. A lot of the characters seem very undefined, especially in Totoro. But man, Kiki is such a great character. That's a lovely, touching movie. We're the Millers. It's a pretty good movie. Will Poulter from Midsummer and The Maze Runner and stuff like that. He's very funny in this. He's a bit younger, and he does a very good job. Everyone else is quite. And what's next? The Stunt Double, which is a short film by Damien Chazelle, famed director of that movie, and I didn't like it. It was interestingly framed. I liked the fact that they were experimenting with that, and I know that's the point. The visual effects were bad, the acting was pretty bad, the story was basically, it was just like an excuse to film things in vertical. Who wants to watch that? Like, I mean, I guess people who bought Quibi. Who's your demographic for this, Apple? Like, who's gonna watch this auteur-directed vertical cinema? Because to me, it's going to be people taking a shit and people on the subway. Not the right time to drop stuff that's meant to be watched on a commute. Next up, we have Porco Rosso, which is another Ghibli film, and it restored my faith. Porco Rosso is so sick. He's a pig, but he's like so into the fact that he's a pig, and he's like, whatever, I'm a pig. And he's very Italian. I connected. Next up, we had Shannon, which was on Gemini Studios. It's really good. It's an experimental film by my buddy Josh. I was really lucky to be able to produce it, and I'd recommend you go check it out. Next, I rewatched Palm Springs. I already gave my thoughts on that movie if you go back to last month's video, so I'm going to move on. Here lies the beginning of a series of films, just 2 films, that have changed my life. Analyze those. Analyze This is a film about a mobster played by Robert De Niro who has panic attacks, so he has to go to a therapist played by Billy Crystal. None of the jokes are funny, but the movie is hilarious. Please watch it so you know what I mean.
Yeah, I got stressed.
It's just spectacular. Then I watched a Pete Davidson comedy special called SMD. I watched a documentary called Bud Greenspan Presents Vancouver 2010 Tales of Olympic Glory. And it was really boring, and it made me kind of angry, because then I started the Sochi 2014 documentary right afterwards, and it was like really well shot and had good narration and was interesting. Next up, I watched Margot at the Wedding to bring me within 1 of completing Baumbach's filmography. It's not fantastic, it's very mediocre, the performances are fine, the Baumbachisms are very heavily present, you know, weird son-mother relationships and kids doing weird stuff, and adults going through divorces and unhappy marriages and pretentious assholes who are dads. The man needed to work some stuff out, obviously, and he figured out how to do it in a good way later on. Then I watched before Game 5 of the Leafs playing the Columbus Blue Jackets, where
and he'll skate this into the open net for a 3-0 Columbus lead.
Before that, to pregame for that, I watched The Hockey Sweater, which is a beloved Canadian children's book and also cartoon by the NFB. It still holds up. It's fantastic. You should watch it. It just feels like childhood. I want to watch it again when it's nice and snowy outside. The next day, I sat down with some friends and I cracked open my Criterion copy of the Scorsese shorts, and I watched What's a Nice Girl Like You doing in a place like this. It's cool to see Scorsese learning how to make a movie, but it is just that. It is Scorsese learning how to make a movie, and it's not too much more interesting other than that. Continuing off of the Scorsese trend, I watched Gangs of New York. It's a very silly premise. at the basis of it, but it takes itself very seriously. It's hard to take a film seriously when there's people walking around in massive hats. Cameron Diaz is in it. I don't like the last shot. The last shot really bothered me. I think it's an enjoyable time if you like Scorsese, but if you don't, you probably won't get a lot out of this. Then I watched Pulp Fiction with my buddy Alex, and it's a great movie. It's a good time to watch. I think it gets a little bit overhated. I also think it gets a little overpraised by two different groups of people. I think it's just like a nice movie. It's just a good, well-made film. Italian American was next. I watched this because I wanted to show Alex basically what my family looks like. And that's it. It's my favorite documentary. I think it's really smart. I think it's really creative. And I'd recommend you all watch it because it's free on YouTube and it's under an hour long. Il Posto was my next one because I wanted to continue the Italian thing, and it's fantastic, it really is. I think weirdly, if I'd seen it a year earlier, it would have been a very good reference for 12s. It feels a lot like an Italian punk kind of. I first heard about this movie by watching the Ben and Josh Safdie Criterion Closet video, which, by the way, if you're into film and you want to explore some stuff, try watching those videos. They're entertaining, they're fun, and they actually do give you some good suggestions. So, Shutter Island was the next one I watched. Scorsese again. I enjoyed watching him tackle the noir genre a little bit. The music was hilarious. It's so much. The whole movie is so much. I enjoyed that down to the crazy suits and the Boston accents, but it lost its magic a couple times. I don't think it'll be very rewatchable despite what it is. Then I watched a great Scorsese movie called The Age of Innocence. Here we go back to period pieces that don't get up their own ass about being period pieces. In fact, the whole point of this one, I believe, is to, poke fun at that whole era, but also at films that take it super seriously, because in the end, period pieces are about pageantry and bullshit that everyone put on to try to convince each other that they were, a good person or wealthy or whatever you want to. And The Age of Innocence really deconstructs that in an interesting way while telling a very well-done love story that I think Scorsese handled really well for someone who doesn't tackle love stories all that much. I really don't know why I watched this movie, but I watched Wanderlust, and it held my attention. Then I released a film called Thumb Drive, and it's up on Geminis, and you can go check it out, and I'm not going to talk about my opinions on it, because that would be weird. The next night, I decided to rewatch another Geminis film, Pandemia, because I wanted to have my heart broken again. Every time. Man, it's good. I love that film, and I'm not just saying that because I produced it. I'm just so astonished with how well Danny did with that movie. So please go watch it. Support her. It's in festivals right now, which is pretty exciting. So yeah, go check that one out because she did an incredible job at that movie. Then I went back to Scorsese and watched Cape Fear. De Niro gives a fantastic performance. He's so unsettling. Different way than in The King of Comedy. I think he's still better in The King of Comedy, but he's very fun to watch here in a very perverse kind of way. The whole movie, it could be described as that. It's very fun to watch in a very perverse kind of way. It's outlandishly entertaining for a film as dark as it is. I watched the 2017 Murder on the Orient Express. That wasn't my pick. Kenneth Branagh's mustache deserves an Oscar just for existing. Look at that thing. It's like two mustaches. Then, with my pals Will and Ben, we watched Greyhound, the new Hanks movie. It's entertaining when it is going. Thing is, it doesn't really get going all that much, and it becomes a bit of a slog about 20 minutes in, because you realize that it's just going to be one long scene. Either way, he wasn't tripping.
They're not tripping.
And then I watched Sleuth. Michael Caine was really good, and Laurence Olivier was obviously excellent. The acting's great, the script is great, pacing's not fantastic, it's very slow. Watch it during the day or when you feel very alert. Next, we come back to my favorite series, Analyze That. Analyze That is spellbinding. Robert De Niro spends most of the film either in a bathrobe or sitting in a trailer.
You crazy idiot! Get the fuck out of here! You! Go ahead, go back to turning tricks and old folk and you pain in the ass!
It ends with them singing a song from West Side Story, and also kind of begins with it. Will and I double featured that with Persona, which was an interesting choice. I have my own interpretation of what it means. Man, it's a great movie. The cinematography is fantastic. The lead actress in this film, whose name is Swedish, so I don't remember it, I'm sorry, is fantastic. She's so good. So I'd recommend watching it just for her performance alone. It's also very short, and it's free on YouTube. Then I watched a film that quickly became one of my top 10 ever. It's so good. Before Sunrise. Anyone who knows me would have probably been able to guess that I would love this film, but it's so beautifully done. The dialogue is so naturalistic. It's the transitions between moments that really fool you into believing that it's all one cohesive. It's just fantastic. Well done. I really enjoyed Linklater's direction, even though it wasn't very showy. I think it just balanced it perfectly, and this film feels very much like it's got both a female and male perspective to it, and I really enjoyed that. It's rare you find films about relationships that balance both perspectives equally, or at least feel like they even have two perspectives, so that was cool. Then I watched Where Are My Pants, which was the final Geminis release of the year. It was directed by my good friend Ben Shane, and I'd highly recommend you all go watch it, and I think it's better than Tenet. I'll get to that. Then I watched The Martian. It's a really entertaining movie. Matt Damon is fantastic in it, but the pacing's a little wonky because every time they cut back to Earth, it really drives the plot down, except when Childish Gambino is there, because he's fantastic. And the direction, it's a little mismanaged, I guess is the right word, because they do this thing where they keep cutting to, like, POV computer, POV helmet cam and stuff like that, and that would be fine if they just used the shot, but they have all these graphics and the shitty audio that would come with it and stuff like that, and it just made it really distracting when the rest of the film is like verite. I really like that style, and that felt way more personal than when it cut to inside the computer. Then I watched Tenet. I didn't like it, didn't enjoy it. I think that Christopher Nolan made a confusing and poorly done action movie with an interesting premise that he kind of wasted. Here's the difference between this and a film like Persona. I didn't understand either of them. In Persona, I think that was intentional, because there's things to analyze, and you can have your own interpretation of Persona, for example. You can't have your own interpretation of Tenet, because they explain everything to you. The issue is that they explain it poorly. It's not that there's any ambiguity to it. Tenet is not ambiguous. It establishes universe rules and it sticks to them throughout, but you don't get it. I don't know. The fact that you'd have to watch it multiple times to understand it, and it's not because there's any ambiguity to it, it's just because it's poorly explained, that's not the sign of a great film, in my opinion. Anyways, Tenet, not it. I finished off the month with Gosford Park. It was a really good period piece and a really bad mystery, which evens out to a very mediocre film that tries to combine them. Anyways, that's it. Those are all the films I watched in August. Thank you very much for watching this, and stay tuned for the next one that I make in a month. Bye.